Here are 10 iconic watches that every enthusiast should know. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always. And let's begin at the beginning. Let's begin with an obvious one that everybody will know. When they think of racing watches, this is what they will think of 99% of the time. It, of course, is the Rolex Daytona. The original OG Rolex Daytona was released in 1963, and this year at Watches and Wonders, they celebrated their 60th anniversary. Over this 60-year span, they have positioned themselves at the top, at the pinnacle of watchmaking, and they are the most popular brand in the world. And the Daytona is one of the most popular sports watches in the world. The Rolex Daytona comes in at £12,700 brand new, so it is by no means cheap, but it gets more expensive when it gets to the pre-owned market. It actually fetches between £28,000 to £32,000 for a newish Daytona with box and papers, which is just madness. And it's because the supply for the Daytona can't compete with the demand. The demand outweighs the supply, so they have this kind of pent-up hype around them, and people are paying way over the asking price. And that is the OG Daytona. But let's move on to number 2. Next up, we have the JaegerLeCoultre Reverso, and this is a favourite of mine, to be honest. It was released in 1931, and it was actually released to withstand the stresses of polo. Polo is basically a sport that rich people used to play back in the day, and some genius invented the concept of basically they thought, how do we protect the face of this watch? And somebody thought, well, why don't we just flip it round and invent a motor system that just flips around to the opposite side? And that concept changed the trajectory of JaegerLeCoultre forever. So these models definitely changed the future of JaegerLeCoultre and also the watch industry as a whole. They're definitely more of a dressy watch, but I would consider them now the dress watch. If you want a dress watch, a classic dress watch, you'd probably go for a Reverso. And now coming through in the Reverso models, you can see jewel faces, chronograph models, skeleton dials, all those fancy complications thrown in there. The watchmaking is absolutely phenomenal. And one day, I can't afford it for a very long time, but one day I will have a JaegerLeCoultre. Next up, we have the Seiko SKX007. And this isn't maybe one that you would expect, but it is an icon in the industry. This model was actually released in 2011, and since then it has become one of the most popular dive watches in the world, on the watch market, which is it's just really incredible. You can't quite comprehend the length of time that it's taken them to get to the top. Now, when we think of these other luxury brands, it takes them 50, 100, 200 years to establish a name and get to where they want to be. Seiko's done it in almost 10. This specific model comes in at about $400 to $600 in price, and I think that had a huge part to play in its popularity. It was a luxury watch for an affordable price. Next on the list is a brand that we don't talk about often enough on this channel, and it's a brand that, I don't know, it just doesn't cross my path very much, but I vowed to change that because it's an incredible brand. It is the Breitling Navitimer. This watch is extremely unique looking, and it was actually released in 1954, specifically designed for pilots. The Navitimer actually has a distinctive side roll bezel, and this bezel is for calculating complex navigational calculations. In 2022, Breitling actually released a kind of baby blue variant of the Navitimer, and it's so sexy. In fact, we like it so much that, Drew, what model was it you went for?
It was the Top Time Triumph Edition.
Top Time Triumph Edition. And you put your name down.
Oh, yeah.
So Drew physically put his name down for one of these Breitling watches, and that's how much we love them on this channel. Next on the list, we have a pretty special one because it was made famous by none other than Steve McQueen. But before we get on to him and the watch itself, I just want to say a huge thank you for you guys. You guys have helped us build an incredible watch community. A truly respectful, incredible watch community. And our goal for the next year is to hit 50,000 subscribers. If you could help us get to that goal and hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. Honestly, guys, I never thought in a million years that I would be here and this would be a job, and I seriously need to thank you. The Tag Heuer monocle was introduced in Geneva and New York in 1969, March the 9th, 1969, and it had this really iconic square-looking face, and this has since become one of Tag's staple lines alongside the Aqua Racer. The monocle rose to fame as Steve McQueen's watch, featured in the 1971 movie Le Mans. But this fact was preceded by another fortunate decision by a visionary, Jack Heuer. Around the launch of the Heuer was the Caliber 11, and Jack established a commercial deal with his friend and Formula One driver, Joe Siffert, a fan of Heuer watches and the brand's first ever ambassador. The next watch on the list, coming in at number 5? Yeah, it's number 5. Coming in at number 5 is the iconic Cartier Tank, which is the staple line within Cartier's arsenal. This model was invented by Louise Cartier in 1917, so it's over 100 years now. The tank's name and design actually pays homage to the FT-17, which, believe it or not, was a French tank. This was actually used in the First World War, and Louise Cartier took a ton of inspiration from that tank, including the name, and made that his staple watch. Now, it's not rectangular or square, it kind of takes the best of both, and it's a pretty iconic piece. Number 4 is a watch that was released in 1972, and to top off, it is designed by the legendary designer, Gerald Genta. It is, of course, the AP Royal Oak. You guys will all know this watch. I adore this watch. It is absolutely stunning, and it was recognized as the first luxury sports watch ever. AP actually makes up part of the Holy Trinity, which consists of AP, Patek, and Vacheron Constantin. Now, AP watches hold a huge amount of value to them because they are so rare nowadays. They are absolutely stunning. They adopt that 70s Genta design, and to be honest, it's a real grail watch for me. The next watch is one that you probably won't expect, because whenever anyone talks about Patek Philippe, they talk about the Nautilus. But people fail to remember the Calatrava. This watch was actually introduced in 1932 by Henry Stern, and soon after his father, a dial manufacturer, acquired Patek Philippe in 1932. This watch combines the brilliance and the beauty of a Patek Philippe movement and puts it into a really elegant case. It is vintage looking, and it's ageless. It will never age because it's what a watch really should look like. It's a classic looking watch. I don't know, everybody talks about the Nautilus, and I just kind of get bored of it sometimes, so I wanted to share something a little different. The next watch is an absolute classic, an absolute banger, one of my favorites, because it's an Amiga. It's not the Amiga Seamaster though. It is the Amiga Speedmaster, first introduced in 1957. Soon after, this watch actually landed on the moon and was the first watch on the moon in 1969. That is, of course, if the moon landings were real and they weren't fake. But did you know that actually the moon watch wasn't the first watch in space? That title actually belongs to a Heuer watch. Anyway, the Amiga's cool. Before we go on to the final watch, remember that Chisholm Hunter are pretty awesome, and we stock a ton of watches. If you want jewellery, watches, servicing, all that kind of stuff, make sure you head to chisholmhunter.co.uk. Or if you want that face-to-face contact to come and talk to somebody like me, then head to one of our 28 stores throughout the UK. When you talk about industry leaders, when you talk about someone that owns the majority of the industry, normally that means that everybody and their dog know who that is. And that is where Rolex comes into this. There's not a man alive that hasn't heard of or has a Rolex. And the final watch is the Rolex Submariner. The Rolex Submariner went into production in 1953 and since then has become one of the most, actually no, I changed that. I have to change it. The most popular known diving watch. Now, I'm biased because I'm an Amiga fanboy, and I would love to give this crown to Amiga. the Amiga Seamaster. But it's just not true. It isn't. The Rolex just owns that side of the industry. And not saying the Amiga's a bad watch. I own an Amiga. I'm an Amiga fanboy. But Rolex is just bigger. Thank you so much for tuning into this Chisholm Hunter video. My name is Harrison, as always. And if you want to see VIP exclusive content, remember to join our After Hours Club on the YouTube homepage. If you head to our homepage, you'll find it. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed, or head to our Instagram, Chisholm Hunter Watches, and drop us a follow. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon.